I'm confident that when we hear the word philosophy, many of us immediately think of something abstract, inaccessible, and irrelevant to practical life. As ordinary people already bustling with daily responsibilities, how can we possibly find the time to delve into such profound matters? Or perhaps recall our school days when philosophy felt like a nightmare to many, myself included. Back then, I only studied it to pass exams. But looking back, I realize it was because I lacked the foundational knowledge and a comprehensive, accurate understanding of what philosophy truly means. In reality, philosophy is not a distant academic discipline. It's a profound truth, active and intimately present in each of our lives. When you feel lost about the future, unsure of what to do in the present, Socrates will tell you that an unexamined life is not worth living. When you want to give up to escape reality, Nietzsche will remind you that he who has a asterisk y asterisk to live can bear almost any asterisk how. And when you are adrift in happiness, unable to find joy, Aristotle will tell you that happiness is a state of the soul placed in the most suitable position. Hearing this, I genuinely feel a profound emotional connection to philosophy, because I believe that while science today is diverse and rapidly advancing artificial intelligence, robotics, aerospace technology aiming for the stars, oceanography, or biotechnology focusing on microscopic models-only philosophy, this one discipline still contemplates and cares for the human inner self. Philosophy consistently strives to help each and every one of us learn how to live this one precious life well. We are born into a hurried era, a life filled with complexities. Facing the daily grind of survival, we don't know how to cope with the pressure of high living costs. Confronted by a modern society, we struggle with the cold indifference of those around us. Or when facing difficulties, suffering, and failures, we often feel helpless. This era has taught us how to earn money, how to progress, but it has utterly failed to teach us how to be happy. Therefore, we still see a stark reality. Young people have the sorrows of the young, middle-aged people experience the crises of middle age, and the elderly carry the pains of old age. Everyone in this era seems to have their own unique struggles, and these are precisely the things the book, Philosophy for Life, aims to convey to all of us. The author of the book, Jude Evans, is an honorary research fellow at the Center for the History of the Emotions, Queen Mary University of London. Evans has a long history of writing for mainstream European and American media, and he has delivered a large number of lectures on life philosophy. In 2013, the British media even voted him one of the new generation's thinkers. What's truly remarkable here is that Evans once suffered from severe depression. He endured a period of immense pain. In that moment of extreme suffering, he encountered philosophy, specifically the cognitive therapy pioneered by Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck, which introduced the ABC principle. It was this cognitive therapy that helped Evans overcome his depression. This therapy was originally inspired by renowned ancient Stoic philosophers and was profoundly influenced by Epictetus, who famously said that men are not disturbed by things, but by the views which they take of them. This philosophy, articulated by someone born in 55 AD in ancient Rome, is still applicable to modern life today. Moreover, it became the spark that ignited cognitive therapy, saving countless people. In the ABC model, A is the activating event, B is your belief about the event, and C is the emotional or behavioral consequence you experience. If you want to change a situation that causes you distress, you cannot start with A because no matter how much you change A, if your perspective on the problem doesn't change, you will still experience a painful outcome. C, therefore, the only way to reduce stress is to change your perception at B. Epictetus's Stoic school of thought is the origin of cognitive therapy. And this therapy saved Jude Evans, helping him develop a remarkable mindset and life afterward. According to the philosopher Socrates, philosophy is closely related to a person's mental and physical health. The problem is that many people don't realize they have been taught by their parents, influenced by the culture where they were born and raised, and even assimilated and heavily influenced by those around them. People don't know that their emotions can actually be controlled through learning the wisdom of philosophy. The power of knowledge derived from philosophy is truly potent and miraculous. It can help us strengthen our inner resilience. You see, modern humans seem very vulnerable. No matter how much money we have, no matter how healthy our bodies are, if our minds are fragile, we can be knocked down in an instant. This is why Evans introduced and integrated the ideas of ancient sages into this book, with the desire to bring the light of these candles to more people. He also hopes that we can return to ancient philosophical ideas to connect with modern life, discover worthwhile ways of thinking, and bring strength to our inner selves in today's practical world. Next, I will share some classical schools of thought so that philosophical wisdom and the illuminating light from the ideas of these sages can spread throughout each of our lives, thereby helping you solve your practical difficulties. Stoicism, resilient as a rock, steering your own life. Before talking about Stoicism, I'll tell you a story. In 1991, during the Iraq War, there was a woman named Sergeant Miller. She was a military medic serving on a helicopter. One day, her helicopter suddenly crashed, breaking her arm and ribs and injuring her leg and almost her entire body severely. But the ordeal didn't stop there. An even more unfortunate event occurred. She was unexpectedly captured by local soldiers. The soldiers forced her onto an armed truck. On that bumpy truck, an Iraqi soldier raped her. Her male colleague, tied up beside her, could only watch helplessly. But during this horrific act, Sergeant Miller didn't feel pain from the humiliation as much as from the excruciating pain each violent movement caused her broken bones. After being thrown from the truck, her male colleague came to her and said, "You must be in so much pain. I think you're so strong." She replied, "What do you think I should do? Should I cry?" For her, crying at that moment would have been useless. Afterward, Sergeant Miller was held in a prisoner of war camp. This was truly a terrifying period that defined her life because she was suddenly stripped of all freedom. Everything in her life was decided by others, and death lurked nearby at any moment. But fortunately, she was eventually rescued. In her later life, she was not haunted by the humiliation, nor did the horrific period make it difficult for her to reintegrate into society. On the contrary, she became an instructor for holistic health courses for American soldiers. When confiding in others about her past, about being raped by Iraqi soldiers on the truck, she often said, "Being raped was not the biggest thing in my life." To utter such a statement, she must have possessed an incredibly strong philosophy of life. And indeed, she once shared that at that time, "One of my most important principles was that I would only change what I could change and would not complain about what I could not change." This is very similar to the circle of influence and circle of concern we discussed in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, isn't it? What I need to do in this life should be within my circle of influence, and I will not waste time or focus on things outside it. And this is a central philosophy of Stoicism. This philosophy helped her create an armor to protect herself from external enemies, allowing her to overcome all the hardships and pain she endured with her incredibly strong inner self. Among the Stoics, one of the most famous philosophers is Epictetus. Regarding his life, he was born a slave. In ancient times, a slave was equivalent to the property of their owner. They had no personal freedom, no right to their own life. Epictetus was sold when he was young, and his first owner broke his leg. Fortunately, when he was sold to his second owner, this knowledgeable master discovered his philosophical talent and allowed him to go into the city to study with the Stoics. Afterward, he gradually became a philosopher and even served as a secretary to the Roman Emperor Nero. Later, he regained his freedom and founded a school to teach philosophy. Many aristocrats, including another Roman emperor, became his students. At this point, you might think Epictetus was truly a winner in life. From a slave, he could reverse his fate to become a great philosopher, the head of a famous school, and a teacher to emperors. You must think he was incredibly wealthy, right? But the truth is, it wasn't so. Epictetus was indeed very famous and had a great influence on later generations, yet he lived in poverty his entire life. He lived in a small hut with just a bed, a mat, a lamp, and an unlocked door. The later Roman emperor, believing Stoicism was not beneficial to the state, exiled him from the country. In exile, he continued his philosophical education. Gradually, the meaning of the word, Stoic, expanded to signify resilience, just like Epictetus. No matter how terrible the environment, how unmanageable the difficulties, not enough food, not enough warm clothes, no money, he considered these normal, his daily life. But how could he be so resilient? It was because he always held a central idea that guided his life. He categorized the world into 2 parts, things we can control and things we cannot control. You'll find that in life, there are too many things we cannot control. We cannot control all aspects of life. We don't know when we will die. We can hardly control our health and wealth, our surrounding environment, the government we live under, our neighbors, how our children perform in school, or our relationships with bosses, friends, relatives, and even our spouses. All these things are beyond our control. We even face the call of death at any moment. As the Tibetans say, we never know which will come first, tomorrow or the next life. What are the only things we can control? Epictetus tells us it is our beliefs. Beliefs are the only things we can control. He also said that most of our suffering stems from two mistakes. The first mistake is that we try to assert complete sovereignty over something outside our control, that is, we try to control what we cannot control. And when we fail to control it, we feel helpless, angry, guilty, anxious, or even depressed. The second mistake is that we don't put enough effort into the things we can control, and we don't take responsibility for our actions, thoughts, and beliefs in those controllable areas. Instead, we blame the external world, our parents, friends, lovers, bosses, the economy, the environment, social hierarchy, or our circumstances. In the end, we still experience suffering and helplessness. We complain that life is unfair to us. All emotional disturbances and suffering originate from these two fatal errors. And this is the irrationality that Epictetus of Stoicism pointed out to us. So, what should we do here? Epictetus gave us two pieces of advice. The first piece of advice is, don't blame yourself for things beyond your control. Just like Sergeant Miller, who was raped in the truck, it was not her fault. She was not to blame. She didn't need to say, I wish I hadn't been on this flight today, because what happened was beyond her control. The second piece of advice is, don't use others as an excuse. Stoics believe that every moment in life is an opportunity to train oneself. For example, Epictetus was born a slave and had his leg broken, or Sergeant Miller, unfortunately, was humiliated and deprived of her freedom. All these were opportunities for them to temper themselves, and all were lessons they had to learn in this life. Therefore, always remind yourself that no matter what happens, we always have the ability to take responsibility. Even when few things are within your control, there is always a gap between external stimuli and your reaction. That space is called belief, and within it lies our freedom and power. Epicureanism, happiness is simpler than we think. There was a philosopher who believed that happiness was the whole of life. He was one of the most important figures in the history of philosophy, Epicurus. Around 400 BCE, as the Stoics were rising, Epicurus and his friends pooled their resources to buy a house on the outskirts of Athens and named it the Garden. He rarely ventured out, living almost entirely secluded within his garden. For him, finding true joy was very simple. It was to achieve a state of tranquility, undisturbed, and then learn to enjoy it. At the entrance to his garden, there was a sign that read, "Stranger, you will live a comfortable life here and enjoy yourself to the fullest." Epicurus believed that enjoyment was very important in life. However, the enjoyment Epicurus spoke of differs from what we understand today. Indulging in food, drink, and sleep is pleasant, but it's a kind of pleasure imposed by society. In fact, these are signs of an inability to truly enjoy life. When a person cannot enjoy, they always hope and yearn for more abundant material conditions, as if they believe that only by satisfying more material desires than others can they achieve greater happiness. This is truly not a state of happiness. The root of happiness is simply experiencing the beauty of life. Therefore, he advocated that people should not engage in work hard, play hard type jobs, as that would foster greed. The happiness Epicurus emphasized was, more importantly, living a simple life, consuming simple things, accepting necessary labor, and thereby maintaining good health. Think about it. What would it be like if we allowed ourselves to live an unnoticed life? Each day, drink a little tea, chat with a few friends, find a park or a stream, lie down and read a book, and live a simple life. Do we really need to be busy all day with company work, household chores, and childcare, forgetting ourselves? Do we truly need to eat delicacies every day? Do we really have to live in a luxurious house, with our children attending prestigious schools, to be happy? The answer is, not necessarily. Epicurus's greatest influence on modern life lies in the happiness movement. Many people in the West today support this movement. Some have even published a magazine called The Lazy Person to teach you how to live happily. When you travel abroad, you'll see many stores called dollar stores, meaning the items sold there are very cheap and you don't need to earn a lot of money to live. However, there has also been a long-standing debate about Epicurus. Some people think that his philosophy is too selfish. If we only advocate living enough and only care about our own well-being, will society progress? This is a question, and I believe the answer depends on how you define happiness. Let me give you another example. A woman named Hannah, living with daily pain, chemotherapy, and the threat of death, used philosophy in her life. She said, "I know my future has been taken away, but I can still find joy in my illness. Only by using Epicurus's philosophy to live in the present do I try to enjoy whatever I'm doing, such as practicing yoga or taking a walk and talking with my husband. Afterward, I discovered that happiness is actually very simple. It's about enjoying the present moments." Hannah said that sadly, we often forget this and get forever caught up in trivial matters. We tend to get wrapped up in the small things in life and cannot feel connected to happiness. This is the important reminder of Epicureanism. Always pay attention to the happy things in life and strive to create small joys from simple activities for yourself to make your life more interesting. We don't necessarily have to live in isolation like Epicurus, but we can maintain a distance from the noisy, bustling life. Occasionally, return to nature, find a sense of familiarity in a leisurely, peaceful life. Haruki Murakami might be greatly influenced by Epicureanism. He advocates that we should work hard to achieve small fortunes. What is called happiness is not as complicated as we imagine. The key lies in how we seek happiness. Happiness stems from virtue. Finally, I want to talk about Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers, scientists, and educators in ancient world history. Aristotle is famous not only for his philosophy, but also as a naturalist. One of his greatest achievements was tutoring the renowned Alexander the Great. Aristotle advocated that happiness is the greatest and best good. Therefore, to achieve a happy life, people should choose a virtuous life. In other words, happiness comes from virtue. So, how do we acquire good virtues? He pointed out that the way for people to cultivate virtue is to constantly seek the golden mean. What is the golden mean here? For example, courage is a good virtue, and courage is the golden mean between excessive recklessness and excessive cowardice. Or humor is also a good virtue, because it is the golden mean between being too serious and being too frivolous. This philosophy of the golden mean is very similar to Confucius's doctrine of the mean. Zhang means not leaning towards any extreme. Yang means suitable and adaptable to circumstances. That is, doing anything to an extreme is not good. One should find the most appropriate point in one's thoughts and actions. Aristotle also spoke about happiness. He believed that happiness is an activity of the soul in harmony with virtue. And we can even find happiness when sacrificing our lives for noble purposes, such as sacrificing for our homeland and countrymen. Of course, those who follow Epicureanism would think that happiness is not so transcendent, but comes from small, simple things in life. So, what exactly is happiness? Which philosophical idea suits you? In reality, there is no standard answer to this question. The key lies in what you need. If a person is lost, without purpose, and has a weak will, they will need Stoicism to become steadier and more resilient. But if a person is living too hastily, busy, irritable, pragmatic, and greedy, they will need to use Epicurus's philosophy of happiness to find a connection with their inner self and a tranquil mind to find true joy. My purpose in introducing this book is not for you to believe in or become a follower of any particular philosophical idea and then rigidly conform to it. You must remember that life is yours, and only you truly understand yourself at what point in life, when, and where you can apply which philosophy for yourself. For me, Stoicism is like a solid rock. It reminds me to live a disciplined, resilient, and strong life in the face of all difficulties. Naturally, my chosen lifestyle is somewhat influenced by Epicurus, simple, tranquil, and close to nature. Furthermore, in most situations involving interactions in life, I recall Aristotle, always prioritizing virtue and maintaining an appropriate balance, moderation in eating, sleeping, working, speaking, and exercising. I always remind myself to keep my thoughts and actions at the golden mean, avoiding extremes or excesses. Below is a table of virtues compiled by Aristotle that I have always kept in my notes, and today I will share it with everyone. And the last thing I want to say is that when you feel too much pressure from the outside world, when you are bound by reality and feel unable to see or find joy, then calmly look back into your own heart. You will find that all our helplessness towards the outside world usually stems from the helplessness within your own heart. Philosophy is a kind of knowledge that transmits energy to the human spirit. It doesn't require us to believe in anything. It only asks us to reflect, to find ways to solve problems. When the problem within your heart is resolved, the problems in your life will also be resolved. Finally, returning to the title of this book, Philosophy for Life. It doesn't actually advise you to choose one philosophy as your guiding principle for life. Instead, we should use philosophy as a tool and the ideas of ancient sages as a means to open a path to live more happily in your present. Instead of being unconsciously assimilated by life day after day, frequently talk to yourself, reflect more, pay attention to experiences, regularly review your thoughts and emotions, and find the thoughts and actions that truly make you happy. Of course, what I've introduced today is just a small part of the book. The entire book not only mentions the 3 great philosophers above, but brings us 12 teachers in total. I hope that today's book will open a new window for you to see the impact of Western philosophy on yourself, and to explore how these philosophical concepts affect you, and how you can apply them in your life. This is the crucial question when reading this book. I hope everyone will love and learn more about philosophy. Later, if we have the opportunity, we will discuss and share more about modern philosophers like Nietzsche or Schopenhauer. This concludes all I wanted to share about this book. Thank you for listening.